He said no to his own bachelor party and his dad lost it. What happened next left everyone speechless. Picture this. Your own father is on the phone, furious, demanding you show up to your own bachelor party. The one you specifically said you never wanted. The one nobody asked you about. The one that got planned entirely behind your back and then sprung on you like it was a gift. And instead of an apology, instead of any kind of self-awareness at all, he is threatening to take back your wedding present unless you fall in line. That is where this story begins. And honestly, it only gets wilder from there. This is not just a story about a bachelor party. This is a story about a man who spent years being told how to feel, what to want, and how to show up, and finally, right before one of the biggest moments of his life, decided he was done with all of it. So let us back up and get the full picture. Our guy here is engaged. Happy, settled, ready to get married. He is the kind of man who moves through life with a quiet, deliberate thoughtfulness that most people only develop after years of hard lessons. He has already paid for his own post-wedding dinner months in advance, so nobody can hold it over his head. That detail matters enormously. Keep that in mind, because it becomes very important later. When the whole bachelor party situation first came up, he had already made one thing crystal clear to his family. He did not want one. Not a big production. Not a party planned by other people on his behalf. He said it plainly, calmly, like a person who had given it real thought and arrived at a decision he felt good about. He expected to be heard. He was not heard. Instead, his dad went ahead and organized the whole thing anyway. Now, some people might chalk that up to enthusiasm. Maybe dad just got excited and wanted to do something special, wanted to feel like a participant in his son's happiness, wanted to play a role in what he imagined the pre-wedding ritual should look like. Except here is the thing. Enthusiasm is not the same as respect. You can be excited about someone and still completely fail to listen to them. Planning a party for someone who explicitly told you they did not want one is not a loving gesture. It is a control move dressed up in celebration clothes. It says, I heard your preference, I just decided mine mattered more. When he found out what was happening, he did not blow up. He did not make a scene or fire off an angry message or call a family meeting. He went home from work, carrying whatever quiet weight that revelation had settled onto him during the commute, and his fiancée asked how things were going with the family. The conversation happened naturally, with his future mother-in-law right there in the room, sitting nearby, probably not expecting to be pulled into a family drama that had nothing to do with her. And her first reaction, without any hesitation, without any need to weigh her words carefully, was, "Are they nuts?" That is the reaction of someone with functioning common sense observing this situation from the outside for the very first time. She had no history with these people, no complicated loyalty to navigate, no reason to soften what she saw. And honestly, she nailed it. His future mother-in-law's advice was simple and solid. Do not go. And let your friends know you are not going so they do not show up and get confused when the bachelor is not there. That advice was reasonable, practical, and respectful to everyone involved. So he followed it. He took a breath, probably sat with it for a moment, and then did what a calm and rational person does. He texted the friends he knew had been invited and explained the situation honestly. The bachelor party was never cleared with him. He would not be attending. But if they wanted to go and hang out anyway, they were welcome to. What happened next says everything you need to know about this man's actual social standing and how much the people in his life actually respect him. Pretty much all of his friends understood immediately. Nobody gave him grief about it. Nobody launched into a lecture about how he should just lighten up or do it for his dad or treat it like it was not a big deal. Nobody pressured him to just go along with things. Several of them already had plans with him coming up anyway, so they just said they would see him then. Others made new plans on the spot, casually and without drama, because that is what people do when they actually like you. A few just said they were cool and left it at that. Not a single one of the people who actually know him and genuinely care about him made this into a problem. Not one. Because here is the truth that the dad completely missed. When people genuinely like you and respect you, they do not need a mandatory event to feel close to you. The friends who matter were already going to be in this man's life before and after the wedding, with or without a bachelor party, with or without a venue and a guest list and a theme. The party was never for him. It was for the people who wanted to feel like they had done something. It was for the satisfaction of checking a box, of pointing to a moment and saying, "See, we celebrated you." Whether or not he actually wanted to be celebrated that way was beside the point. And then the phone rang. His dad called, furious, voice tight and impatient in the way of someone who expected compliance and encountered refusal instead. Demanding to know why he was getting cancellation texts from the guests. And in that moment, under what must have been a genuinely uncomfortable amount of pressure, the response was perfect. Simple, calm, and absolutely airtight. He said, "Well, that is because I am not going to be there, like I told you a couple of days ago, and I figured people should know that the bachelor would not be at his own bachelor party." There is no argument to make against that. There is no logical rebuttal. It is just the truth, delivered cleanly and without apology, the kind of statement that leaves silence on the other end of the line because there is genuinely nothing to say to it. So what did his dad do? He escalated. He said he had had enough of the antisocial behavior, as though opting out of an event you never agreed to was a character flaw, as though having preferences about your own pre-wedding week was something to be ashamed of. He demanded attendance. The answer was no. Then came the threats. First, the dad said he had planned to pay for the post-wedding dinner but now would not, to cover the money lost on the party. That threat was probably delivered with some confidence, with the weight of a man who has used financial leverage before and watched it work. Except this time something had shifted. Because of the preparation, because of the quiet, careful groundwork this man had laid months earlier, he had already paid for the dinner himself when they booked the venue. So that threat landed with a thud, hollow and embarrassing, and went absolutely nowhere. Then the dad said fine, it would come out of the wedding present instead. He was reaching now. Grasping for anything that might land, anything that might produce the reaction he was looking for, some flicker of anxiety or guilt or capitulation. And the response to that was equally calm. "We do not need your wedding present, but if that makes you feel better, then go ahead." That is not rudeness. That is not cruelty. That is a man who has quietly made himself financially and emotionally independent of the people who used money as leverage his entire life, and is now watching that leverage evaporate in real time, threat by threat, in a single phone call. The siblings weighed in too, of course. Families like this rarely let someone sit with a decision in peace. The brother and sister both sent texts saying he should have just sucked it up and gone. The brother mentioned losing some money because of the cancellations, which is a remarkable thing to bring up, framing his own inconvenience as though it were a moral argument. And the response to the brother was sharp and accurate. He told him that maybe next time he would learn to think for himself instead of blindly following their dad's orders all the time. That shut him down completely. Not because it was cruel, not because it escalated the fight, but because it was true. The brother knew exactly what it meant. That is why he went quiet. You can argue against accusations. You cannot argue against recognition. The mom was conspicuously silent through most of this, which is its own kind of story. He did speak to her, but the subject never came up. Sometimes silence is the loudest thing in the room. Whether that silence was agreement, discomfort, quiet sympathy she felt unable to voice, or something more complicated and long practiced, it spoke volumes about the family dynamic at play here. She had probably watched this pattern unfold many times before. She knew better than most what the inside of it felt like. And through all of it, what was this man's plan for the actual weekend? He was going to have a nice evening with his fiancée and her son and go to the kids' soccer game. He was going to stand on the sideline and cheer and maybe feel the particular warmth of being part of a small family moment that had nothing to do with performances or obligations. Then on Saturday, instead of the dinner he had originally planned with his buddy, they found cheap tickets to a daytime baseball game at the local stadium and changed the plan because they felt like it. Just like that. Easy and free and completely their own decision. That is what freedom looks like. That is what a good weekend looks like when you are not spending it performing for other people. Here is the thing that needs to be said clearly. This story is not really about a bachelor party. It is about a pattern. A family pattern where one person's preferences, boundaries, and explicit requests are consistently overridden because someone else decided they knew better. The dad did not plan that party out of love. He planned it because he wanted to, and because he expected compliance, and when he did not get it, he reached for every financial weapon he had. The wedding present. The dinner. All of it. Every single threat dried up the moment it hit someone who had already prepared for exactly this. That preparation was not an accident. That preparation was a man who knew his family, understood how they operated, and quietly built a life in which their tools no longer worked on him. The brother following along without question, the sister piling on, the threatening phone call, the guilt about the money, all of it fits the same mold. This is a family where one person sets the terms and everyone else is expected to fall in line, and where anyone who does not fall in line gets labeled difficult or antisocial or ungrateful. And this man, right before his wedding, standing at the threshold of the next chapter of his life, decided he was not going to do that anymore. What makes this story genuinely satisfying is that he did not burn anything down dramatically. He did not yell or issue ultimatums or make a big declaration. He did not need the confrontation to feel like a victory. He just quietly informed the relevant people of the truth, let the consequences unfold naturally, and made plans that actually made him happy. That is not antisocial behavior. That is emotional maturity. That is a person who has done the internal work and no longer needs external validation to feel certain about his own choices. That man handled this with more grace and backbone than most people could manage. He said what he needed, was ignored, held his ground without cruelty, watched every threat fail to land, and went to a baseball game. Let the dad be angry. Let the siblings text their grievances into the void. The bachelor got exactly the kind of pre-wedding week he actually wanted. And when Saturday came, he was in the stands with his friend, probably eating overpriced stadium food, probably laughing about something completely unrelated to any of this, not thinking about any of it for even 1 second. Good for him. Genuinely and completely good for him. A shop assistant put her hand in my face while I was shopping and I did not stay to hear the rest. A staff member at a makeup shop just put her hand directly in front of a customer who was reaching for a product. Not a gentle touch on the arm. Not a polite excuse me. Her literal hand, extended right in front of the customer's reach, like a crossing guard stopping traffic. And somehow this employee thought that was a reasonable thing to do. Let us set the scene properly because the context here matters quite a bit. Our narrator is at a mall with a friend. The plan is simple. Head to the bookshop, but the mall layout has Sephora going the opposite direction, so she decides to pop into a closer makeup store on the way to check if they have a decent eyebrow pencil. That is it. That is the full scope of the mission. One item. Low stakes. Easy errand. The kind of errand you do not even mentally prepare for because there is genuinely nothing to prepare for. You walk in, you find the thing, you pay, you leave. That is the entire transaction as any reasonable person would expect it to go. The first issue is that the shop itself is a mess. The products are not organized by brand or by type, which means finding anything specific requires actually scanning the shelves yourself instead of going straight to a section. So she is doing exactly that, moving slowly along the display, eyes tracking across the rows of products, looking carefully along the shelves, trying to locate what she came in for. It is the kind of unhurried, focused browsing that any shopper does when the layout gives them no other option. Totally normal shopping behavior. Then she notices a staff member has appeared behind her. Just standing there. Staring. With a pout. Not asking if she needs help. Not offering a warm greeting or a casual "can I point you toward anything?" Not saying a single word. Just hovering at a distance close enough to be felt, with an expression that radiates something between suspicion and mild disdain. The kind of look that makes the back of your neck prickle. The kind of look that tells you, without a single syllable being spoken, that your presence in this store has already been categorized as a potential problem rather than a potential sale. That hovering is already a problem, but she lets it go and keeps looking. She finds the eyebrow pencils. There is only one brand available, which narrows things down immediately. She checks the tester with the focused attention of someone who actually knows what she is evaluating, testing the pigment saturation against her wrist, assessing the brush quality, checking how it drags across skin, whether it builds naturally or goes on too hard. She decides it works well enough for her needs, and goes to pick up the dark brown shade, extending her arm toward the shelf with the easy confidence of someone completing a decision she has already made. A completely normal, perfectly reasonable purchasing decision made by an adult human being in a shop that sells things. And then the staff member materializes beside her with her hand extended directly in front of the product. Let me pause here for a second. Who taught this person that this was acceptable customer service behavior? Who looked at that interaction during training and said yes, physically blocking a customer's reach with your hand is the move? What followed was a little speech delivered in what the narrator describes as an awkward friendly tone, that particular retail register where someone is trying to sound helpful while doing something that is not helpful at all. The staff member pointed out that the black one was on promotion for $10, while the other colors were $12. The implication underneath that information was not subtle. She had looked at this woman the moment she walked through the door, assessed her appearance from across the shop, clocked the jeans and the baggy top, and done some kind of rapid internal calculation that she probably did not even fully consciously register. And the result of that calculation was a decision. This customer needed to be redirected toward the cheaper option. Not because the customer asked for help. Not because there was any indication she was confused about pricing or standing in front of the shelf looking uncertain. Not because she had asked the staff member a single question. Because the staff member decided, on site, in under 30 seconds, that this person probably could not afford the $12 shade. Here is the part that stings. The narrator herself acknowledges she was not looking her most polished that day. Jeans, baggy top, not particularly impressive by her own admission. And she says it plainly, she was not impressed by her own look either. She is not claiming she walked in looking like she owned the place. But here is the thing. None of that matters. Absolutely none of it. What someone is wearing when they walk into a shop tells you nothing about their ability or willingness to pay for something. It tells you nothing about their financial situation. It tells you nothing about their intentions. It tells you nothing except that they chose comfortable clothes that day. Perhaps they came from the gym. Perhaps they are running errands and comfort was the priority. Perhaps that is simply how they dress and it is entirely none of anyone's business. The leap from baggy top to needs to be pointed at the discount option is not a leap that comes from nowhere. It is a judgment, and it is an unkind one. Assuming someone needs to be steered toward the sale item based entirely on how they look is not helpfulness. It is a judgment call about someone's worth made in under 30 seconds, dressed up as customer service. And the hand in front of the reach made the power dynamic unmistakable. This was not, let me help you find the best deal. This was, I have already decided what you can afford, and I am going to physically redirect you there whether you asked me to or not. There is a meaningful difference between those two things, and any honest reading of what happened knows exactly which one this was. The response was exactly right. She looked at the staff member, gave her an awkward smile, and said "Oh I see" while pulling her hand back, because the staff member's hand was still extended in front of the shelf like a barrier she had not yet decided to lower. The narrator was still being polite at this point, still giving the interaction a chance to resolve itself without drama. Then the staff member started to repeat the whole speech again, opened her mouth and began saying only the black one is 10, the other colors are, cycling back to the top of the script as though the first delivery had not landed correctly and a second attempt might change something. And before she could finish the sentence, the narrator raised her hand directly up toward the staff member's face and walked out. Honestly, I felt that in my chest. Now, the narrator herself wonders if she was being too harsh or too bitchy about it. So let us actually examine that honestly. The hand raised toward the face is a bold move. It is not the most measured response in the world. There is an argument that it tips over the line of what we would call composed. But what she was responding to was already a chain of escalating presumptions, each one building on the last, each one adding another layer of being treated as less than. First the staring from behind with a pout, that silent surveillance before a word had even been exchanged. Then appearing right beside her as she reached for something, the invasion of physical space-time to the exact moment she was about to complete her purchase. Then the physical hand barrier, which crossed from intrusive into something that felt genuinely aggressive. Then the patronizing speech about price points she never asked about and did not need. Then beginning the speech again after she had already acknowledged it, because apparently one unsolicited opinion was not quite enough. At some point a person runs out of polite smiles to offer. At some point continuing to smile and nod starts to feel less like grace and more like permission. The other thing worth noting is that she did not yell. She did not make a scene in the middle of the store. She did not say anything cutting or rude out loud. She raised a hand and walked away. In a situation where she was being treated as though she needed to be managed and monitored and steered rather than simply served like any other customer, she removed herself from the situation cleanly. Then she walked to the opposite end of the mall and went to Sephora like she originally planned. Problem solved. Eyebrow pencil obtained, presumably in the correct shade, at the correct price point she selected herself, and without anyone's hand in her face. The real question this story raises is not whether her exit was perfectly polished. The real question is why a retail employee decided that physically intervening in a customer's product reach was appropriate in the first place. The answer is pretty clearly rooted in a snap judgment about how this woman looked. And that kind of assumption does not belong in customer service. It does not belong anywhere. If you work in a shop and your instinct when someone reaches for a product is to block them and redirect them based on their appearance, you need to examine where that instinct is coming from, because it is not coming from a good place. She is not the asshole here. Not even close. What she felt was completely valid. Being observed with suspicion from the moment you walk in, physically intercepted mid-reach while doing something as ordinary as picking up an eyebrow pencil, and then spoken to as though you cannot be trusted to select your own price point without guidance, is an experience that would make anyone's patience run thin. The hand raise at the end was not her finest moment, but it was an understandable one. The staff member had already burned through every reasonable expectation of professional courtesy well before that exit happened. Sometimes you just raise your hand and walk to Sephora. So drop a comment below and tell me which story hit harder for you. Was it the guy who watched every single one of his dad's threats evaporate one by one? Or the woman who raised her hand and walked straight to Sephora? If you enjoyed this one, a like and a subscribe would mean a lot, it really does help.